In my mid-20s, I used to be a party planner and event coordinator. I was basically in charge of throwing dope parties for this record label group. I'd have to rent out venues for a night or weekends, which would allow us to host our events in these places. Usually, we wouldn't pay until after the event, and the landlord or owner of whatever property we were using would take a cut of the profits. There was this one time that my group rented this big warehouse for an entire weekend, and we would be hosting parties Friday and Saturday night. Once the place was rented out, I had to do a lot of setting up, which included setting up tables for bottle service, setting up portable bars, and a DJ stand. A lot of work would go into these kinds of pop-up venues, but they were always extremely profitable. My buddy Jack, who was also on the event planning team, was helping me on the Wednesday before the party weekend. He drove a truck full of equipment to the empty parking lot that the warehouse sat in. I was having trouble figuring out how to get the power to a certain part of the warehouse activated. I looked for any kind of electrical panel or circuit breaker, bugs, but I was having trouble finding one. I gave the building owner I dealt with a call, and he picked up almost right away. His name's Carter. He told me exactly where to go for the electrical panel that would turn on the specific lights I was looking for. He directed me to a door that had an exit sign on top of it, but it wasn't on through this door. I was in a very short, very narrow space with a door on one side, which I presume led to the outside, and then a half flight of stairs. On the other side, I was supposed to go down this half flight of stairs, which led to another tight space with a couple doors. This room was hard to explain without just seeing it for yourself. I'm 6'4", so I had to bend down a little bit, just so my head wouldn't hit the ceiling. That's how cramped it was down there. This level had very dim nightlight kind of lights hung on the ceiling. Dim, but enough light to navigate. Just fine. I found the electrical panel, and Carter told me exactly which switches to flip. Then I shut the panel door and turned the key to lock it, even though he told me to just leave the key in the lock. I thanked him, and our call ended. I heard a loud and obvious buzzing sound that would be going off in spasms. I followed the sound of it to a door leading to a pitch black room. Pulling the door open was hard as it scraped against the concrete floor. There was this red light in the top corner of the room that synchronized with the buzzing sound. When the buzzing stopped, the light would also turn off. I was trying to figure out what it was, but it did make sense. I stepped deeper into the room and noticed whenever I moved, the light would turn on and the buzzing would sound. When I stood still, it stopped. I don't know why, but I was creeped out. So I went back to the doorway of the room. I took one more look inside, and the red light turned on again, lighting up the room with this eerie red glow. I decided to call Carter and tell him about the potential problem with the light and the buzzing. He told me calmly that the light was a motion sensor, and the buzzing was because that one in the basement was busted. I asked what he meant by motion sensor, and he explained that there's at least one in every room in the building, as it's part of the security system. I looked back into the room, and the light was still on. I asked what could be setting it off in there, and he said he had no idea, and that's when I spotted it. There was someone I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman because of the long, disheveled hair, sitting in one corner of this room, half hidden behind a pile of old boxes. Their eyes were the most noticeable feature. because of how goddamn wide they were. Open the mouth was like a half smile, and they were moving their arm in a manner that was as if to tell me to come here. I know it took me a few seconds to describe this person just now, but I was literally screaming at the side of them in under a second. I slammed that door shut and ran back up the stairs and out that exit door. I told Carter we were leaving and not using the warehouse anymore. I didn't ask any more questions after that. I didn't care. It was his problem. I yelled at Jack to get everything he could back into the truck. We collected our stuff as quickly as possible, loaded the truck back up, and left. I didn't even bother locking the door to the warehouse. I just wanted to be far away from there. I still today don't know what to make of it. The Carter guy seems so weirdly calm about my telling him about a deranged-looking person in the basement of his warehouse. Thinking back, that light was probably going off because of that person sitting in the corner, waving me over, or doing whatever the hell he or she was doing with her arm. It was a truly nightmare-inducing, horrible experience. Several years ago, two friends and I heard from a mutual friend about this creepy, abandoned warehouse or furniture store that was only a few miles from my house one night. While on a drive, the three of us decided to check it out. We parked at a Walgreens a few hundred yards from the warehouse and started walking towards it. As we got closer, my friend, I'll call him Jim, kind of chickened out and stayed back while me and my other friend, I'll call Mark, continued on as we approached the right side of the building. It became very obvious that this place had been abandoned for a very long time. The front entrance was boarded up and there were vines and ivy growing all over the building. Our mutual friend said that the only way in was through a busted-in wall in the back. We went around back, and sure enough, there was a broken and narrow section of wall we could get in through. We stepped in, and it was completely dark. We couldn't see our hands in front of our faces, so we turned on the flashlights on our phones and looked around. There was trash and debris everywhere. On the concrete floors, we were in what appeared to be the main room of the old store, and it was huge. An entire football field could probably fit in this room. We could even hear an echo when we talked. We started looking along the walls, which were covered in graffiti. The graffiti was littered with what must have been gang symbols, as well as profanity, as you would expect. What was really unsettling, though, was that as we moved further along the back wall, the graffiti was getting more and more disturbing. One of them read, "Kill yourself tonight." Then the graffiti was getting satanic. There were tons of inverted crosses, pentagrams, 666, and violent scenes depicted. While this stuff was creepy enough, it wasn't the worst of what we saw towards the end of the building. There were some steps leading to smaller rooms, as we shone our lights on the steps. We saw a large dry pool of what was probably blood all over the steps. This deterred us from exploring the smaller rooms beyond, so we headed to the left side of the room as we were walking. Our lights caught something hanging from the ceiling. We got closer and saw what it was. It was a noose, still hanging from one of the rafters. It became very obvious that the people that come to this place use it for very evil purposes. After that, we decided we'd spend enough time in there and headed for the hole in the wall. We entered through, we got outside, and saw that there was another smaller building/warehouse behind the main one, despite the freaky things we saw inside. we were still curious and decided to check this one out too. One thing that was very odd was that there was a small room in the front of the warehouse that had no doors. Only one window inside was a large inverted cross hanging from the decrepit ceiling. We came to the left side of the warehouse, where the large garage-style entrance was. This building was similar to the first one. It was one large empty room with tons of trash everywhere. There was more disturbing graffiti. However, there were these holes at the base of the walls that were really odd-looking. We shined our lights down them but couldn't see the bottom. What were these for? We had seen enough at this point and headed back outside. It was then that my friend Mark got a call from Jim. As he was talking to Jim, his face suddenly changed to a downright horrified expression. I said, "What's wrong?" What he said next sent the chill down my spine. "Someone else is here," he said. Before we could even turn to run, a white truck peeled around the corner at an alarming speed, heading right towards us. We started booking it towards my car, and as we got around the other back corner of the building, we saw another black truck parked alongside. But we kept running as fast as we could, and thankfully, the three of us made it back to my car. We got in and peeled out of there. I don't know what those guys in the trucks were there for, or why they chased after us. But based on what we saw in those buildings, it wasn't anything good. Thankfully, we never found out, and we never returned to that place.